How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be a state of the game video. So this is really important to me because I feel like there's so much to talk about leading up to nationals, whereas we have so many different decks that are viable at the moment, but we only have two decks that are dominant at the moment, especially Mitsu, which is already going to be such a pain going into Nats. But we're going to talk about some ways to counter that today. Talk about the ways that I would probably fix the deck if we do get a ban list at some point, which I don't even think they'll get one until after Justice Hunters, to be completely honest with you, which is unfortunate because I really wish that we would. But, you know, I think that we're in such a weird spot right now in the game because of things like Charmies, which are weird because they should only be once per turn, but now you can activate two in a turn, which is just like super cringe, and they're kind of just maxi, but not maxi, right? We'll talk about how I feel about those and more later on in the video. But, you know, the game is in a really weird spot right now, and leading up to Nats, there's going to be two more sets as well. So definitely a lot to think about with deck choices. But if you want to check my sponsors on RW, Cloud, Gem, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, or Grimoire, definitely go ahead and do so all down below in the description. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, so we can hit 25,000 in the next 2 weeks. We can hit 30,000 at the end of the year. So I really do appreciate all the support and everyone that walked up to me today. Thank you all so very much. I wanted to make this video when I got home from the regional because I feel like there's a lot on my mind and I really want to just kind of talk about the format because, like, leading into this, look at the large drop off. You have 29.05%, 24.21%, and then 7.51%. Now, I've always preferred the heavier top end meta. I know a lot of people really do like the spread out meta. I prefer 1 to 3 decks being really good. It's just a lot better for skill expression. If you're playing against like 12 different decks in a room and you can expect to play against a different deck every single round, that's like not even skill anymore. It's just like a lot of very weird luck based. You have to make a lot of concessions in your side to support such a wide format. And you're still making concessions from other decks as well, so it's just not really ideal at all ever for a competitive format to be super wide. If the format's ever super wide, it's a casual format. It's not a competitive format. It's really odd. A lot of people enjoy it, though. I don't understand it. I really do like a lot of skill expression into a lot of mirror matches. I think that it's really solid. I know that, like, Riw is like the face of the game right now, right? And if you're not playing Mitsu, it's kind of just like, what are you doing? At least to a lot of people right now, because these cards are just so broken. I can't say that I necessarily disagree when you look at the percentages of the wins. And that's why you have these websites that really do show you just the insane drop off that these decks do have. So you can always try to sneak in with other decks. We have decks like Mermail that are doing really well right now. We have even the Blue Eyes deck that is performing quite often. But besides Mystery or like Malice, it's really hard to like play a different deck going into these events, just off the numbers. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. And, you know, just kind of going into the rest here as well is, you know, like, is Droll necessary? Are the Molcharmies necessary? And I feel like Droll is really necessary because, like, think about it to yourself real fast. Before you hit the comment button, right? What would you be doing against Mitsu if you didn't have Droll? What would you be doing? You really wouldn't be doing much of anything. You would watch your opponent play Solitaire, and that would be game, right? So I really do like Droll as a card. I think that it's fine, especially if you know how to like play around it and you're doing things in draw phase. I feel like there isn't a whole lot of playing around Charmies because a lot of times you still have to give your opponent like 2, 3, sometimes even 4 draws just to be able to play the game, which is really obnoxious. And it is something that I really don't love because especially if you can just like chain another Charmy, I really wish they would have did like 1 per copy. So it's just like you can activate 2 in a turn, but it has to be like Fua and Perulia or Perulia and Muals, right? So it's not just like 2 of the same one. I feel like that would have made it a little more balanced as well. But it really does depend on like how you view the Charmies. I think that they're really toxic in the game, and I think they change way too much because the TCG collectively agrees that we don't need anything that's like Maxi related. I think Droll and things like that are fine enough. But the Charmies just add another layer of like luck sack to the game. And did you draw your Charmies or did you not play the mini game and draw your Charmies, right? So it's the same thing with like Master Duel. Like they just put Maxi to 2, right? And that might not seem significant for a lot of players who've been playing for a long time. That's huge because the draw cards should not be legal. They're not okay. I think that it's fine if you have like Shared Ride, right? Because that's a card that you can like set and pass on. And there's just like other things that you can do, and you can like drop an L-Storm and then force it out, and you're like, you know it's there, and you can like chain to it, right? I don't know. There's just like not a whole lot that you can do about like a Fualos, right? That is just like really obnoxious. Whereas like a Droll, I feel like is pretty stable in the format. It really does help out a lot. One of the things that I feel like you really do need regardless, though, is going to be Thrust and Gnome. Your side deck right now should be 3 Lancia, 2 Thrust, and a Gnome. It's just the most optimal right now, at least in that small package of your side deck going to the 2 best decks in the room. Just because you're maining Droll and you're having these in your side, Gnome is just so insane because it lasts the entire turn, and then you can also use it again from your graveyard. So it's just like one of the hardest things to get out of when you're trying to play against anyone playing Mitsu Rai, because this card is just obnoxious. And it's really good, and it's really necessary, because when you're playing against that deck, it can be really overbearing to play against. The deck itself usually opens up anywhere from 2 to 4 pushes through a board, and that's a lot, right? That's a lot. So that's something where you do need tech cards like this that will help you out in the game. One of the things that I view as a really good answer is going to be Protos. Things that you can get to off of Banshee, right? Things that you can get to even in my way when I was playing Tier Limit, just like milling Flag into the graveyard and then reborning it with Promethean and then going into something else after that, right? And then adding your Protos. There's a lot of very interesting ways you can get to this card. A lot of people are even playing Escachados right now, which is pretty cool. I think these cards are really good answers. If you're really afraid of Malice and then you're playing like Ryzeal, you can just go X dump Baguska, banish a light, a fire, and earth with Baguska, and summon Protos and call Dark. And then all of a sudden, Pyramitsu, and if you're playing against like Malice, call Dark, and they auto die, right? Like there's nothing that they can do about this. You can let your opponent draw 30 cards. As long as one of them is not Imperm, they auto lose. So that is something that is pretty crazy about Arch Nemesis. I always will recommend this, especially going second, because once you crack the board, if you do have a way to Protos, you just drop it and you auto win the game. So this is another way that you can really try to help yourself out with winning through complex boards, especially when decks like Mitsurugi only really have destruction effects. So if you just like summon Protos, there's not a whole lot that they can do about it. We do have Battles in Duad coming out soon, which is pretty cool, and I've been thinking about this for Nationals as well. But if you look at the fact that people are already siding the Lancias and Chaos Hunters, there's just no way that we're playing decks like Orcus, right? Like, that's just never going to be an option, especially when people are already on those cards, right? Like, it just seems a lot scarier. And then you have Vanquish Soul Holy Seal, which is a really crazy card, but it's only really crazy when it resolves. So if you're not resolving Holy Seal, it just feels really bad, because then it just feels like you're playing regular Vanquish Soul, and regular Vanquish Soul was never enough this format, right? So that's something that you really got to think about as well. And, you know, the new sets, they just really pale in comparison to what we already have, and they don't really add a whole lot. Whereas when we get Canine cards and Justice Hunters, right, like, Vanquish Soul is about to be crazy. Some of these other decks are about to be crazy. But until then, it's kind of just not the best. Now, with Nationals around the corner, Ryzeal Mitsurugi is the best deck, and that's something that we just kind of know right now, right? Like, this is going to be something that you will see multiple rounds in a row. And that's something that you have to be prepared for, because this deck is going to be super brutal. But at the end of the day, you really want to make sure that you have the correct options in your deck list. Make sure that you're maining Droll. Make sure that you're siding Thrust and Gnome. These are the ways that we're going to be beating this deck repeatedly when it is a problem. Have your Fuas. Have your Perulias. Perulia is an amazing card against Ryzeal. It does really well. My own self-reflection from these last 2 regionals, which honestly are probably the 2 worst I've performed at in a long time, is just really looking at the deck list itself, looking at ratios of hand traps to starters and deck count, because there's a lot of hands today where I open up like double Imperm, Nibiru, Cross Out, and Ryzeal Cross. And, you know, you're just kind of staring at it like, okay, like, this doesn't do anything, right? And it feels awful. And that's one thing where you kind of have to figure out, like, what's going wrong. So I think, like, right now the format's really worked because of Charmies. And then, like, you want to play the one of Cross Out, right? But then you're like, okay, if I draw the Cross Out, I want to have the relevant target. So then you keep in, like, a Fua, right? And then you just have to play the mini game of, please don't draw the one of Fua and let me draw the one of Crossout and let them draw the one of Fua, right? So it's definitely going to be an interesting time when it comes to trying to decide a deck for Nats and really looking at your numbers. But it is going to be really important to kind of take some of these things in consideration. The other thing is when you brick, especially post side, right? It's really different, because if you ever brick on cards that are going to be in the deck anyway, right? Like, double Imperm, I sided 1 out. I drew Rock. I sided 2 out, right? Because I was going first. And so I'm still drawing those cards, and I never was siding them all out, of course, because of the cross out as well. And so it's even better if you're like interrupting your opponent, and then you also just have Nibiru on top of it if you need it, right? So then you have going first, cross and cross out. They're not cards you wouldn't have had in your deck anyway, right? You just happen to draw them. So sometimes you got to look at things as variants. Sometimes you got to look at things as your deck list may not have been super optimized, which it hurts to think about too, right? Because you're like, wow, I spent all this time going to this event, whereas maybe you needed to look at it again, you know? So there's definitely a lot of things that I'm kind of beating myself up about right now with the event. And, you know, I kind of just have to take that and apply that to Nats. I think the state of the game right now is in a really weird spot. Again, just like the Charmies are really warping the game right now, which is not great. I really do think that a lot of the floodgatey blowouts that we have, especially things like Lancia, Droll, Molcharmies, DDGs, Mischief, like those are the cards that just make for non-games. And I've always been a fan of interaction. That's why I love playing Tier so much. That's why I love Tier format and Tier mirrors. It was just straight up all interaction. And you can be like, yeah, but Dweller, but like you almost never really lost to Dweller if you really played the deck, right? Like you would go to these events and you could answer Dweller. So that's one thing that you got to think about as well. I really do think the game is in an off spot right now. If I had to rate the format like 1 to 10, it's like a 5. It's not very enjoyable. I would hope that we get a ban list, but again, I don't really think that we're going to get one until after Justice Hunters. That's just like me being objective. I think it's going to be way later. We're not going to get one for Nationals. I wish we would, but I don't think we will. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, definitely go ahead and join my Twitch, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. I'll catch you all in the next video, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you all so much.